You know that moment when a game stops feeling like a game, and you actually forget you're holding a controller? Yeah, some open-world games have reached that level now. I'm talking about worlds so detailed, so alive, that they genuinely feel like real places you could step into. And honestly, once you experience that kind of realism, it's really hard to go back. So if you've ever wanted games that feel less like pixels and more like real life, you're in the right place. In this video, we're diving into 15 open-world games that push realism to a whole different level. Not just graphics, but the way the world reacts to you, how characters behave, the tiny details you don't even notice at first, but end up blowing your mind later. Some of these games you already know, but a few might actually surprise you. Let's get into it. Starting with Red Dead Redemption 2, and honestly, this game still feels unfair to everything else out there. The level of detail here is just insane. You walk through a muddy town, and your boots actually get dirty. Your horse reacts to the environment. NPCs remember how you treated them, and even something as small as your character's beard growing over time adds to that feeling of realism. But what really hits different is how alive the world feels. You're not just completing missions, you're living in it. Random encounters don't feel scripted, they feel natural, like you just stumbled into someone else's story. And yeah, sometimes the pacing is slow, but that's kind of the point. It forces you to slow down and exist in that world, not rush through it. Few games make you feel that connected, and once it clicks, it's honestly hard to forget. Starting with Red Dead Redemption 2, and honestly, this game still feels unfair to everything else out there. The level of detail here is just on another level. You're not just walking through a world, you're existing in it. Ride your horse through mud, and it actually sticks. Your clothes get dirty, your beard grows over time, and even your horse feels like a real companion instead of just a vehicle. NPCs don't act like background props either. They react to you, remember your behavior, and sometimes even surprise you with completely unscripted moments that feel way too real. What really makes it hit different is how slow and grounded everything feels. At first, that slower pace might feel weird, especially if you're used to fast games, but give it time and it pulls you in. Hunting feels like actual hunting, gunfights feel heavy and dangerous, and even just riding through the wilderness with no objective can feel relaxing in a strange way. There's always something happening, whether it's a random encounter on the road or just watching the world live its own life around you. And yeah, it's not perfect. Some people find the controls a bit clunky, and the realism can sometimes get in the way of fun if you just want quick action. But if you're someone who loves immersion, this game is on a completely different level. It doesn't just look real, it feels real, and that's why it's still one of the best examples of an open world done right. Then you jump into Cyberpunk 2077, and the realism here hits in a completely different way. Instead of nature and slow life, this game throws you into Night City, and it feels like a real breathing megacity that never sleeps. The streets are packed, neon lights everywhere, people talking, arguing, living their own lives, and it genuinely feels like you're just one small part of something massive. Walk through a crowded market or drive at night, and you'll catch yourself just looking around instead of focusing on the mission. What really stands out is the level of detail in the environment and characters. Facial animations, voice acting, even the way people move and react during conversations makes everything feel personal. When you're talking to someone, it doesn't feel like a cutscene. It feels like you're actually there, standing in front of them. And with the first-person perspective, that immersion hits even harder because you're seeing the world exactly through your character's eyes. Of course, it had a rough launch, no denying that. Bugs and performance issues kind of held it back early on, and that reputation still sticks with it. But after all the updates, the experience now feels way more polished and stable, and when everything clicks, the atmosphere, the sound design, the city itself, it creates this vibe that's honestly hard to match. It's not realistic in a natural way like some other games, but in terms of feeling like a real futuristic world, it absolutely nails it. And trust me, we're just getting started, because some of the next worlds feel even closer to real life in ways you wouldn't expect. Now stepping into Kingdom Come. Deliverance feels less like playing a game and more like being dropped straight into the Middle Ages with zero shortcuts. This one doesn't try to make you feel powerful right away, and that's exactly why it feels so real. You start off as basically nobody, and even something as simple as swinging a sword feels awkward at first. You actually have to learn how to fight, how to read people, how to survive, and that slow growth makes everything feel earned. What really stands out is how grounded everything is. There's no fantasy magic, no over-the-top abilities, just pure historical realism. You need to eat, sleep, take care of your wounds, and even your appearance matters when talking to NPCs. If you show up dirty or covered in blood, people react differently, and those small details add up in a big way. Even the world itself feels authentic. From the forests to the villages, everything looks and behaves like it belongs in that time period. It's not the easiest game to get into, though. The mechanics can feel a bit rough at first, and it definitely tests your patience. But once you get used to it, there's something really satisfying about how real it feels. Every fight is tense, every decision matters, and you're not some chosen hero. You're just a guy trying to survive in a harsh world, and that grounded approach makes it stand out in a way most open-world games don't even try. Then there's Grand Theft Auto 5, and even after all these years, it still holds up in a way that's honestly kind of crazy. Los Santos doesn't just look like a city, it feels like one. You've got traffic behaving differently depending on the area, random conversations happening on the street, people reacting to chaos around them, and somehow it all comes together to create this believable living world. You can literally spend hours just driving around, switching radio stations, watching the sunset hit the city, and it still doesn't feel old. What makes it feel real isn't just the visuals, it's the variety of life happening around you. One moment, you're in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The next, you're in a crowded downtown full of noise and energy. And the way the three main characters, Michael, Franklin, and Trevor, each experience the world differently adds another layer to that realism. It feels like you're seeing different sides of the same city through completely different lives. Of course, it leans more into fun and chaos than strict realism, but that's kind of its strength. It balances that this feels like a real place vibe with the freedom to do absolutely anything, whether that's following traffic laws like a normal person or causing complete madness. And somehow, both feel equally natural in this world. Even now, it's still one of the best examples of an open world that feels alive without trying too hard. And the next few games take realism in a totally different direction, not just in cities, but in how the world itself reacts to you. Then you step into Ghost of Tsushima, and the realism here isn't just about detail, it's about feeling. This game doesn't try to copy real life in a technical way like some others, but somehow it still feels incredibly real because of how natural everything is. The wind guides you instead of a mini-map, animals lead you to hidden places, and the world itself feels like it's constantly moving around you. You're not staring at UI markers, you're actually reading the environment, and that makes a huge difference. What really stands out is how alive the island feels. The way the grass moves as you ride through it, leaves flying in the air, the lighting changing depending on the weather. It all creates this atmosphere that pulls you in without even trying. And when you get into combat, it's clean, fast, and grounded. Every sword fight feels intense, like one wrong move could cost you everything, which makes even small encounters feel important. It's not realistic in a hardcore simulation way, but in terms of immersion, it's on another level. You start to move slower, pay attention to your surroundings, and just take in the world instead of rushing through it. And honestly, there are moments where you just stop and look around because it feels too good to ignore. And now we're getting into games that push realism even further, not just in how they look, but in how they make you interact with the world itself. Now jumping into Horizon Forbidden West, and this is where realism meets pure visual overload in the best way possible. The first thing that hits you is just how insanely detailed everything looks. From dense jungles to underwater environments, every part of the world feels handcrafted, like there's no empty space anywhere. You climb a mountain and can see miles of terrain, all packed with detail, movement, and life, and it never really breaks that illusion. What makes it feel real isn't just the graphics, though. It's how the world reacts around you. Machines roam in patterns that actually make sense, animals behave naturally, and the environment itself feels dynamic. You're not just running through it, you're interacting with it constantly, whether it's climbing, swimming, or setting up traps before a fight. And when combat kicks in, it feels strategic instead of chaotic, like you actually have to think about how you approach each encounter. There are moments where it almost feels too perfect, like everything is designed to impress you, but that doesn't take away from how immersive it is. The animations, the facial expressions, even small interactions between characters make conversations feel more grounded than you'd expect. It's one of those games where you can tell how much effort went into making the world feel believable, even with all the futuristic elements mixed in. And trust me, the next few games take realism in ways that aren't just about visuals, but how the world actually lives and breathes around you.
Taking the shot! That hits its mark!
Then, there's Days Gone, and this one hits realism in a way that feels raw and a bit unpredictable. You're out there on your bike, low on fuel, low on ammo, and the world just doesn't care. Weather changes, day turns into night, and suddenly a quiet road can turn into chaos if a horde shows up out of nowhere. That constant tension makes everything feel real, because you're never fully in control. What really stands out is how the world reacts to you over time. Freakers don't just stand around waiting, they move, they migrate, they hunt. And when you run into a massive horde, it doesn't feel scripted, it feels like you made a mistake being there. Even your bike feels like part of the experience. You have to maintain it, refuel it, repair it, and when it breaks down at the worst possible moment, you feel that panic instantly. It's not a perfect game, some missions can feel repetitive, and the pacing can drag a bit early on. But once it opens up, there's something really immersive about just surviving in that world. Riding through empty roads, hearing nothing but the engine and distant sounds, it creates this lonely, grounded atmosphere that sticks with you. It's one of those games where the realism comes from how vulnerable you feel, not just how good it looks. And now we're getting into some worlds that feel even more alive, where every little system works together in ways you don't expect. Then you get into Metro Exodus, and the realism here feels quiet, heavy, and honestly a bit uncomfortable in the best way. This isn't the kind of open world that throws a million activities at you. Instead, it gives you these large, open areas that feel abandoned but still full of life in a strange way. You're constantly aware of your surroundings, checking corners, listening for sounds, because danger doesn't announce itself, it just happens. What really makes it feel real is how grounded all the survival mechanics are. You're managing your gas mask, cleaning your weapons, watching your ammo, and every little action feels important. Even something simple like reloading during a tense moment can feel stressful because you know you don't have much to waste. And the way the world changes with time, day to night, different weather conditions, it all affects how you move and what you encounter. There's also this strong sense of journey throughout the game. You're not stuck in one place, you're traveling, meeting people, seeing how different parts of the world have survived. And those small human moments, sitting around a campfire, listening to conversations, they hit differently because everything else feels so harsh. It's not flashy realism, it's subtle, immersive, and sometimes even a bit draining, but that's exactly what makes it stand out. And from here, things start to get even more intense, because some of the next worlds don't just feel real, they react to every single choice you make. Then you drop into Far Cry 6, and right away the world just feels loud, alive, and full of energy. Yara isn't just another open map, it feels like an actual country going through something. You've got soldiers patrolling roads, civilians reacting to fights, checkpoints popping up, and the whole place feels like it's constantly in motion whether you're involved or not. Even just driving around, you'll run into random situations that make it feel less scripted and more natural. What makes it feel real is how grounded the chaos can be. Yeah, it has that classic Far Cry over-the-top action. But underneath that, the systems actually make sense. Enemies react differently depending on how you approach them, stealth feels more believable, and the environment gives you multiple ways to handle situations instead of forcing one path. And visually, the game does a great job with lighting, weather, and small environmental details that make the world feel lived in. It's not the most realistic in terms of pure simulation, but in terms of atmosphere, it does a solid job. You feel like you're part of a bigger conflict, not just a player ticking off objectives. Sometimes it leans a bit too much into arcade-style action, but when everything clicks, especially during those unscripted moments, it really sells the illusion of being in a real, unstable world. And now, we're heading into games that push realism in ways you might not expect at all, not just through action, but through how deeply they simulate everyday life. Then you jump into Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and this is where scale alone starts to feel realistic in a different kind of way. Ancient Greece isn't just big here, it feels endless. You've got massive cities, small villages, open seas, and landscapes that actually feel like they connect naturally instead of just being separate zones stitched together. Sailing across the ocean, docking at random islands, and just exploring without a plan gives you that sense of freedom that feels surprisingly close to real travel. What really adds to the immersion is how alive everything feels around you. NPCs follow routines, soldiers patrol areas depending on who controls the region, and battles can break out without you even being part of them. You can literally walk into a war zone and just watch it unfold, and it doesn't feel staged. Even small things like day and night cycles, changing lighting, and the way crowds react to your actions help sell that feeling of a living world. It does lean more into RPG mechanics than pure realism, so you've got abilities and combat moments that feel a bit exaggerated, but at the same time, the world itself grounds you. Climbing mountains, exploring ruins, sailing through storms, it all feels smooth and natural. It's one of those games where you lose track of time because you're not chasing objectives, you're just existing in the world. And now we're getting close to some of the most impressive worlds on this list, the kind that don't just look real, they actually make you forget you're playing a game. Then you step into Watch Dogs, Legion, and this one feels realistic in a way that's more about systems than visuals. London here isn't just detailed, it's dynamic. The whole play-as-anyone idea sounds like a gimmick at first, but once you start switching between random people on the street, it actually changes how you see the world. Every NPC has a routine, a job, a background, and suddenly the city feels less like a map and more like a network of real individuals. What makes it interesting is how the world reacts depending on who you are. You're not always some overpowered main character. Sometimes you're just a construction worker sneaking into a restricted area, or a random civilian trying to avoid trouble, and that shift makes situations feel more grounded. The city itself helps sell that realism too. Surveillance cameras everywhere, drones flying around, guards scanning people. It creates this believable near-future version of London that feels a bit too close to reality sometimes. It's not perfect though. The story can feel a bit disconnected because you're constantly switching characters and not every NPC feels equally deep. But the idea behind it, the way the world functions as a system instead of just a backdrop, is what makes it stand out. It feels like a place where everyone exists, whether you're controlling them or not. And now we're heading into the final stretch, where the realism isn't just about systems or visuals, but the emotional weight of the worlds themselves. Then you get into the forest, and this is where realism starts to feel genuinely uncomfortable in the best way. You're not dropped into a huge city or some polished world, you're stuck in a forest that feels way too quiet, way too empty, and at the same time, like something is always watching you. From the moment you start chopping trees, building a shelter, or just walking through the woods, everything feels grounded and physical, like your actions actually matter. What really sells it is the survival side of things. You're not just collecting resources for the sake of it, you actually need to eat, drink, stay warm, and protect yourself. Building your base piece by piece feels natural, not rushed. And when night falls, the whole vibe changes instantly. Darkness hits differently here. Sounds become louder, movements feel slower, and that tension builds up without the game even trying too hard. And then there are the enemies, which don't behave like typical AI. They watch you, learn your patterns, sometimes even back off instead of attacking right away. That unpredictability makes every encounter feel real and a bit personal. It's not just about fighting, it's about surviving in a place that doesn't want you there. It might not have the most advanced graphics compared to others on this list, but in terms of atmosphere and how it makes you feel, it absolutely nails that sense of realism. And trust me, the last few games take this idea even further, where the world doesn't just react to you, it challenges how you think and play at every step. Then you launch into No Man's Sky, and the kind of realism here is completely different from everything else on this list. It's not about one detailed city or a single handcrafted map, it's about scale. The fact that you can land on a planet, take off, fly into space, and land on another world without any loading screens still feels kind of unreal. But at the same time, it creates this believable sense of being a tiny part of an endless universe. What really pulls you in is how each planet feels like its own ecosystem. Different weather, strange creatures, unique landscapes, and sometimes even harsh conditions that make survival feel real. You're constantly managing your resources, upgrading your gear, and adapting to wherever you land. And even though some planets can feel a bit repetitive after a while, there are moments where you discover something completely unexpected, and it reminds you why the game feels so special. It's not realistic in a traditional sense. Obviously, you're not going to space like this in real life, but the systems and the scale make it feel believable in its own way. You start to feel that isolation, that curiosity, and even that calm when you're just exploring with no pressure. It's one of those games where you don't always have a goal, you just exist, explore, and see what's out there. And now we're down to the final few, and these next worlds don't just look real or feel real. They hit you on a completely different level. Then you step into Death Stranding, and this is where realism becomes something you actually feel in your hands. On the surface, it sounds simple. You're just delivering packages, but the way the game handles movement turns that into something way deeper. Every step matters. You're balancing your weight, adjusting your posture, watching the terrain, and even walking in a straight line can feel like a challenge if you're not paying attention. It's slow, it's deliberate, and somehow it pulls you in instead of pushing you away. What really makes it stand out is how connected you feel to the world itself. The terrain isn't just there for visuals, it actively works against you. Rocks, rivers, slopes, everything affects how you move, and when you finally make a successful delivery after struggling through all that, it feels earned in a way most games don't even try. There's also this unique sense of connection with other players, where structures left behind by others can help you on your journey, and that creates this quiet, shared experience without ever directly interacting. It's definitely not for everyone. The pacing is slow, the gameplay loop is different, and if you're expecting constant action, it might not click. But if you give it time, there's something incredibly immersive about it. The world feels empty, but not lifeless, and the emotional weight behind everything adds another layer that sticks with you. It's one of those games where realism isn't about looking real, it's about making you feel every single moment. And now we're at the final stretch, and these last games take realism to a level where it almost feels like you're stepping into another life completely. Then you jump into Watch Dogs 2, and this is where realism feels a lot more relaxed and natural compared to the darker tone of other games. San Francisco just has this vibe that feels alive without trying too hard. People are walking around, talking on their phones, reacting to what's happening nearby, and it never feels forced. You can just walk through the city, hack random devices, mess with traffic lights, or sit back and watch things unfold, and it still feels like a real place doing its own thing. What really makes it stand out is how interactive everything is. You're not just moving through the world, you're constantly affecting it. Hacking isn't just a gimmick here, it's part of how you experience the environment. You can manipulate situations without even being seen, and sometimes the best moments come from just experimenting and seeing how the world reacts. It gives you this sense of control while still making the city feel independent from you. It's definitely more colorful and less serious than something like its sequel, but that actually works in its favor. The world feels more lively, more human, and less controlled. There's a lot of personality in how people behave, how missions play out, and even how small interactions happen around you. It might not be the most realistic in terms of hardcore simulation, but in terms of feeling like a believable modern city that you can mess around in, it absolutely nails it.
But now you did.
Smart, stubborn, or both.
And honestly, that's what makes all these games stand out. They don't just look real, they feel real in completely different ways. Some pull you in with insane detail, some with smart systems, and some with pure atmosphere. But once you experience worlds like these, normal open-world games just don't hit the same anymore. Now I'm curious, which game felt the most real to you, or is there one you think deserved to be on this list? Drop it in the comments, and if you enjoyed this, share it with someone who loves immersive games as much as you do.